Thomas Hardy wrote with the eye of an antiquarian. His Wessex novels are set in a fictionalized version of his native Dorset, but the customs, dialects, and beliefs he transcribed into them are drawn directly from a vanishing rural England he was determined to preserve on paper. He kept folklore notebooks, corresponded with members of the Folklore Society founded in 1878, the same year Return of the Native was published, and treated peasant superstition not as a curiosity but as serious record of how people actually lived. Return of the Native takes place on Egdon Heath, a windswept tract of bracken and barrow mounds where the modern world feels like a rumor. Among its cast is Susan Nonsuch, a Heath-dwelling mother convinced that the striking and rebellious Eustacia Yeobride has overlooked her sickly son, that is, harmed him by malign or envious glance, what other cultures call evil eye. Hardy's account of Susan's response runs to several pages of close working detail. The distant light which Eustacia had cursorily observed in leaving the house came, as she had divined, from the cottage window of Susan Nonsuch. What Eustacia did not divine was the occupation of the woman within at that moment. Susan's sight of her passing figure earlier in the evening, not 5 minutes after the sick boy's exclamation, "Mother, I do feel so bad," persuaded the matron that an evil influence was certainly exercised by Eustacia's propinquity. On this account, Susan did not go to bed as soon as the evening's work was over, as she would have done at ordinary times, to counteract the malign spell, which she imagined poor Eustacia to be working. The boy's mother busied herself with a ghastly invention of superstition, calculated to bring powerlessness, atrophy, and annihilation on any human being against whom it was directed. It was a practice well known on Egdon at that date, and one that is not quite extinct at the present day. She passed with her candle into an inner room, where among other utensils were 2 large brown pans containing together perhaps 100 weight of liquid honey, the produce of the bees during the foregoing summer. On a shelf over the pans was a smooth and solid yellow mass of a hemispherical form, consisting of beeswax from the same take of honey. Susan took down the lump and, cutting off several thin slices, heaped them in an iron ladle, with which she returned to the living room and placed the vessel in the hot ashes of the fireplace. As soon as the wax had softened to the plasticity of dough, she kneaded the pieces together, and now her face became more intent. She began molding the wax, and it was evident from her manner of manipulation that she was endeavoring to give some preconceived form. The form was human. By warming and kneading, cutting and twisting, dismembering and rejoining the incipient image, she had in about a quarter of an hour produced a shape which tolerably well resembled a woman and was about 6 inches high. She laid it on the table to get cold and hard. Meanwhile, she took the candle and went upstairs to where the little boy was lying. "Did you notice, my dear, what Mrs. Eustacia wore this afternoon besides the dark dress? A red ribbon round her neck. Anything else?" "No, except sandal shoes." "A red ribbon and sandal shoes," said she to herself. Mrs. Nonsuch went and searched till she found a fragment of the narrowest red ribbon, which she took downstairs and tied round the neck of the image. And fetching ink and a quilt from the rickety bureau by the window, she blackened the feet of the image to the extent presumably covered by shoes, and on the instep of each foot marked cross lines in the shape taken by the sandal strings of those days. Finally, she had tied a bit of black thread round the upper part of the head, in faint resemblance to a snood worn before confining the hair. Susan held the object at arm's length and contemplated it with satisfaction in which there was no smile. To anybody acquainted with the inhabitants of Egdon, the image would have suggested Eustacia Yeobright. From her work basket in the window seat, the woman took a paper of pins of the old long and yellow sort, whose heads were disposed to come off at their first usage. These she began to thrust into the image in all directions with apparently excruciating energy. Probably as many as 50 were thus inserted, some into the head of the wax model, some into the shoulders, some into the trunk, some upwards through the soles of the feet, till the figure was completely permeated with pins. She turned to the fire. It had been of turf, and though the high heap of ashes which turf fires produce was somewhat dark and dead on the outside, upon raking it abroad with the shovel, the inside of the mass showed a glow of red heat. She took a few pieces of fresh turf from the chimney corner and built them together over the glow, upon which the fire brightened. Seizing with the tongs the image that she had made of Eustacia, she held it in the heat and watched it as it began to waste slowly away, and while she stood thus engaged, there came from between her lips a murmur of words. It was a strange jargon, the Lord's Prayer repeated backwards, the incantation usual in proceedings for obtaining unhallowed assistance against an enemy. Susan uttered the lugubrious discourse 3 times slowly, and when it was completed the image had considerably diminished. As the wax dropped into the fire, a long flame arose from the spot, and curling its tongue round the figure, ate still further into its substance. A pin occasionally dropped with the wax, and the embers heated it red as it lay. None of this was Hardy inventing atmosphere. What he did was photograph the practice in fiction at the moment it was sliding out of living memory. Prosper Mérimée was a French writer of the Romantic movement. As with many Romanticists, he was also a noted archaeologist, historian, and an important figure in the history of architectural preservation. He is best known for his novella Carmen, which became the basis of Bizet's opera Carmen. Merimée acknowledged that he chose to make his femme fatale Carmen a gypsy, mostly because that's what he had been studying at the time he composed the novella, and he was very excited about the subject. One can't fault any man who lived 200 years ago for not following modern academic styles in his research, but just because it's old doesn't mean his reports should be totally discounted. These are some of the best records we have about the life of the Romany people at the time. Within his fictionalized story of Carmen, he sought to utilize known information about their lifestyle and magical practices. Because the story was widely read, these types of spells became general folk magic throughout the entire world. Here are some excerpts from the book. We crossed the bridge over the Guadalquivir, and at the far end of the suburb we stopped in front of a house of anything but palatial appearance. The door was opened by a child to whom the gypsy spoke a few words in a language unknown to me, which I afterward understood to be Romany, or Chipikali, a gypsy idiom. The child instantly disappeared, leaving us in sole possession of a tolerably spacious room, furnished with a small table, 2 stools, and a chest. I must not forget to mention a jar of water, a pile of oranges, and a bunch of onions. As soon as we were left alone, the gypsy produced out of her chest a pack of cards bearing signs of constant usage, a magnet, a dried chameleon, and a few other indispensable adjuncts of her art. Then she bade me cross my left hand with a silver coin, and the magic ceremonies duly began. It is unnecessary to chronicle her predictions, and as for the style of her performance, it proved to be no mean sorceress. Officio mio, where are you taking me to? To prison, my poor child, I replied, as gently as I could, just as any kind-hearted soldier is bound to speak to a prisoner, and especially to a woman. Alack, what will become of me, Senor Officio? Have pity on me. You are so young, so good-looking. And in a lower tone she said, let me get away and I'll give you a bit of the barlachi that will make every woman fall in love with you. The barlachi, sir, is the lodestone with which the gypsies declare one who knows how to use it can cast any number of spells. If you can make a woman drink a little scrap of it, powdered in a glass of white wine, she'll never be able to resist you. I answered as gravely as I could, we are not here to talk nonsense. You have to go to prison. Those are my orders, and there's no help for it. I have said that most gypsy women undertake to tell fortunes. They do this very successfully, but they find a much greater source of profit in the sale of charms and love philters. Not only do they supply toads' claws to hold fickle hearts and powdered lodestone to kindle love in cold ones, but if necessity arises, they can use mighty incantations which force the devil to lend them his aid. Last year the following story was related to me by a Spanish lady. She was walking one day along the Calle de Gala, feeling very sad and anxious. A gypsy woman who was squatting on the pavement called out to her, my pretty lady, your lover has played you false. It was quite true. Shall I get him back for you? My readers will imagine with what joy the proposal was accepted, and how complete was the confidence inspired by a person who could thus guess the inmost secrets of the heart. As it would have been impossible to proceed to perform the operations of magic in the most crowded street in Madrid, a meeting was arranged for the next day. Nothing will be easier than to bring back the faithless one to your feet, said the gitana. Do you happen to have a handkerchief, a scarf, or a mantilla that he gave you? A silken scarf was handed to her. Now sew a piastra into one corner of the scarf with crimson silk, sew half a piastra into another corner, sew a peseta here, and a 2 real piece there. Then in the middle you must sew a gold coin. A doubloon would be best. A doubloon and all the other coins were duly sewn in. Now give me the scarf and I'll take it to the Campo Santo when midnight strikes. You come along with me if you want to see a fine piece of witchcraft. I promise you shall see the man you love tomorrow. The gypsy departed alone for the Campo Santo, since my Spanish friend was too much afraid of witchcraft to go there with her. I leave my readers to guess whether my poor forsaken lady ever saw her lover or her scarf again. A note on terminology. The word gypsy or gypsy, though historically common and certainly the preferred term in Merimee's day, is considered outdated and often carries pejorative connotations in modern times. It originates from the mistaken belief that these communities came from Egypt. Gypsy derives from the word Egyptian, a myth that persisted in European languages since around 1600. While historically associated with the Romani people, it is not the preferred term in modern usage. Meanwhile, the English slang jib, meaning to cheat, is unrelated to the Romani people, contrary to popular belief. It actually derives from 18th century slang from university servants in Britain. In Romani, also spelled Romani with a Y, are a diverse ethnic group with roots tracing back to northern India, often self-identify using terms like Rome, a man, Romney, a woman, or Roma, plural. The term Romany, attested in English in the early 19th century, is also derived from these roots. The etymology of Romany connects to the Sanskrit gomba, referring to a class of musicians and artisans. Over centuries, this term evolved from linguistic shifts, including the transformation of the retroflexed g into a rolled r in some dialects. Coincidental resemblance to the English word Rome has probably helped the term's adoption in English over other names, such as Bohemian, Traveler, Gitano, etc. Christopher Marlowe was a Cambridge-educated playwright, the greatest talent of the Elizabethan stage before Shakespeare overtook him. He was rumored to be an atheist. These charges of blasphemy almost certainly worked at some point as an agent of the crown, and was killed in a Deptford tavern at 29 in a fight officially recorded as a quarrel over the bill. Dr. Faustus states from the last few years of his life somewhere between 1588 and 1592, and survives in two markedly different printed versions the scholars have argued over for 4 centuries. The play's plot was not Marlowe's invention. He was working from the Historia von Dr. Johann Faustin, an anonymous German chapbook printed in Frankfurt in 1587, and translated into English around 1592 as the history of the damnable life and deserved death of Dr. John Faustus. Behind that chapbook stood a real person, Johann Georg Faust, an itinerant German astrologer, alchemist, and self-promoter who lived roughly 1480 to 1540, and whose reputation for diabolical pacts attached to him during his lifetime and metastasized rapidly after his death. By the time Marlowe got hold of the material, the historical Faust was already deeply buried under legend. But what Marlowe added beyond the verse was magical detail credible enough that period audiences took it seriously. The Latin incantation, the anagrammatized divine name, the abbreviated saints' names, the characters of signs and planets, the aspersion with consecrated water, and the signing of the cross, these are not stage flourishes invented to sound impressive. They are recognizable elements drawn from the actual Grimoire tradition Marlowe could have read at Cambridge, including material associated with Cornelius Agrippa, whom Faustus name checks earlier in the play. The Heptameron attributed to Peter de Urbano, and the procedures partially reproduced in Reginald Scott's Discovery of Witchcraft, published in 1584. There is a persistent legend that during early performances an extra devil was sometimes counted on stage, and while the story is almost certainly apocryphal, the fact that it circulated at all suggests how unsettling contemporary audiences found the conjuration sequence to watch. Enter Faustus to conjure. Faustus. Now that the gloomy shadow of the earth, longing to view Orion's drizzling look, leaps from the Arctic world unto the sky, and dims the welkin with her pitchy breath, Faustus, begin thine incantations, and try if devils will obey thy hest, seeing thou hast prayed and sacrificed to them. Within this circle is Jehovah's name, forward and backward anagrammatized, abbreviated names of holy saints, figures of every adjunct of the heavens, and characters of signs and erring stars by which the spirits are enforced to rise. Then fear not, Faustus, but be resolute, and try the uttermost magic can perform. Sint mihi Dei Carontis propiti, valeat numen triplex Jehovah. Ignei ere aquatani spiritus salvete, orientis princeps, Beelzebub inferni ardentes monarcha, et demogorgon propitiamus posut appareat et surgat Mephistopheles, quod tum aris, per Jehovam Gehennam et consecratam aquam quam nunc spargo, signumque crucis, quod nunc facio, et per vota nostra ipse nunc surgat nobis dictatus Mephistopheles. Enter Mephistopheles. I charge thee to return and change thy shape. Thou art too ugly to attend on me. Go and return an old Franciscan friar. That holy shape becomes a devil best. Exit Mephistopheles. I see there's virtue in my heavenly words. Who would not be proficient in this art? How pliant is this Mephistopheles, full of obedience and humility. Such is the force of magic and my spells. Know, Faustus, thou art conjurer laureate. Thou canst command great Mephistopheles. Queen Regis Mephistopheles, fratris imagine. Re-enter Mephistopheles like a Franciscan friar. Mephistopheles. Now, Faustus, what wouldst thou have me do? Faustus. I charge thee wait upon me whilst I live, to do whatever Faustus shall command, be it to make the moon drop from her sphere, or the ocean to overwhelm the world. Mephistopheles. I am a servant to great Lucifer, and may not follow thee without his leave. No more than he commands must we perform. Faustus, did not he charge thee to appear to me? Mephistopheles. No, I came hither of mine own accord. Faustus, did not my conjuring speeches raise thee speak? Mephistopheles, that was the cause, but yet per accidens. For when we hear one rack the name of God, of joy the Scriptures and his Saviour Christ, we fly in hope to get his glorious soul, nor will we come unless he use such means whereby he is in danger to be damned. Therefore the shortest cut for conjuring is stoutly to abjure the Trinity and pray devoutly to the Prince of Hell. Faustus, so Faustus hath already done and holds this principle. There is no chief but only Beelzebub, to whom Faustus doth dedicate himself. This word damnation terrifies not him, for he confounds hell in Elysium. His ghost be with the old philosophers. But leaving these vain trifles of men's souls, tell me what is that Lucifer thy lord? Mephistopheles. Archregent and commander of all spirits. Faustus. Was not that Lucifer an angel once? Mephistopheles. Yes, Faustus, and most dearly loved of God. Faustus. How comes it then that he is prince of devils? Mephistopheles. Oh, by aspiring pride and insolence, for which God threw him from the face of heaven. Faustus, and what are you that live with Lucifer? Mephistopheles. Unhappy spirits that fell with Lucifer conspired against our God with Lucifer, and are forever damned with Lucifer. Faustus. Where are you damned? Mephistopheles. In hell. Faustus. How comes it then that thou art out of hell? Mephistopheles. Why, this is hell, nor am I out of it. Think'st thou that I, who saw the face of God and tasted the eternal joys of heaven, am not tormented with 10,000 hells in being deprived of everlasting bliss? O Faustus, leave these frivolous demands, which strike a terror to my fainting soul. Faustus. What is great Mephistopheles so passionate for being deprived of the joys of heaven? Learn thou of Faustus' manly fortitude, and scorn these joys thou never shalt possess. Go bear these tidings to great Lucifer, seeing Faustus hath incurred eternal death by desperate thoughts against Jove's deity. Say he surrenders up to him his soul, so he will spare him 24 years, letting him live in all voluptuousness, having thee ever to attend on me, to give me whatsoever I shall ask, to tell me whatsoever I demand, to slay mine enemies and aid my friends, and always be obedient to my will. Go and return to mighty Lucifer, and meet me in my study at midnight, and then resolve me of thy master's mind. Mephistopheles. I will, Faustus. Exit. Faustus. Had I as many souls as there be stars, I'd give them all for Mephistopheles. By him I'll be great emperor of the world, and make a bridge through the moving air. To pass the ocean with a band of men, I'll join the hills that line the Afric shore, and make that country continent to Spain, and both contributory to my crown. An emperor shall not live but by my leave, nor any potentate of Germany. Now that I have obtained what I desired, I'll live in speculation of this art, till Mephistopheles return again. Exit. The end.